It's Maria Sharapova's least favorite place in the world, but locker rooms are where tennis matches can be won and lost. Rafael Nadal of Spain poses in the locker room with the Coupe de Mosquetes trophy at Roland Garros in 2014, as well as a place of preparation for matches. Locker rooms are also a perfect setting for posing for photos after winning trophies. Novak Djokovic is pictured holding the Butch Buchholz trophy after winning his fifth Miami Open title in 2015. As the old saying goes, by failing to prepare, you are preparing to fail. Jo-Wilfried Tsonga is pictured warming up at the Hampton Sports Complex in Dubai in 2014. Victoria Azarenka of Belarus is pictured at Crandon Park Tennis Center at the Miami Open. Azarenka, who also isn't competing at Roland Garros, recently hinted in a tweet this week she would play at Wimbledon later this year after intending to make her own comeback. The Belarusian gave birth to son Leo in December and hasn't played since last year's French Open at a Wimbledon warm-up tournament. Another absentee from the French Open is Sharapova, who was denied a wild card by the tournament organizers. Serena Williams will miss the 2017 French Open as she's on maternity leave. Last month her publicist confirmed Serena is expecting a child with her fiancé, Reddit co-founder Alexis Ohanian, and is due to give birth in the fall. There is such a thing as locker room power, former British Davis Cup player Arvind Parmar told CNN Sport. Here Frenchman Tsonga of the Manila Mavericks gets ready in the locker room before his team's match against the Singapore Slammers during the Coca-Cola International Premier Tennis League at the Mall of Asia Arena in November 2014. Stan Eilers Wawrinka of Switzerland is pictured posing with the Norman Brooks Challenge Cup in the players' dressing room after winning his men's final match against Nadal of Spain at the 2014 Australian Open at Melbourne Park. Access is normally restricted to players and coaches only, though exceptions can be made. Real Madrid icons Cristiano Ronaldo and Raul are pictured posing with Nadal during the Madrid Masters in May 2010. Britain's Andy Murray heads back to the locker room after finishing a practice session at Wimbledon. London's Queen's Club's dressing room decor has a more old-school feel. Success equals champagne celebration in the dressing room. Djokovic is pictured celebrating after winning 2008 Australian Open final against Tsonga in 2008. Switzerland's Roger Federer is filmed by a TV crew holding the Wimbledon trophy as he enters the dressing room after beating Andy Roddick of the US in the 2009 final. Federer has opted not to play at this year's French Open. CNN Maria Sharapova once described the women's locker room as my least favorite place in the world. Sharapova, of course, won't grace the clay courts of the French Open, the second Grand Slam of the season, this year after tournament organizers denied the Russian a wild card, but her blunt description gives an inkling of the tensions that arise within a space that is rarely talked about in any sport. Yet what happens in the locker room, where access is restricted to players and coaches only and where the big stars vie for supremacy, is almost as important as what happens on court. There is such a thing as locker room power, former British Davis Cup player Arvind Parmar told CNN Sport. Players on a hot stake can build a reputation amongst the peers that they're a man in form, said Parmar, who retired in 2006 after a decade on the men's tour and now works as a coach and broadcaster. Read more. Take Rafael Nadal, the odds-on favorite to win an unprecedented 10th French Open title after a 17-1 run on the red clay this spring in Europe. The aura is back. Right now he has a huge amount of locker room power in the fact that if you were drawn against him, he is already a breakup in both sets, said Parmar. It's pretty intimidating knowing you've got to play one of the top guys who are in form like Nadal at the moment. Psychologically, there is a huge advantage to have, he added. Read, how much will tennis miss Serena Williams? Read, Novak Djokovic hires Andre Agassi must watch. 13 videos. The most successful family affair in tennis. Serena Williams shows off new baby girl. Serena Williams sneaks up on fans during match. Murtiglo on Serena comeback and McEnroe tries to clarify Serena Williams jab. McEnroe won't apologize to Serena Williams. Serena Williams is definitely pregnant. The tennis-loving iguana at the Miami Open. Federer as you've never heard him before. Puig's emotional interview on Hurricane Maria. Nadal wins in New York's Sloane Stephens press conference outtakes. Roger Federer's tattooed superfan rituals. Craig O'Shaughnessy was coaching at the French Open in 2013 when he was nearly run over in the locker room by a player sprinting past at full speed. "If I had been walking out half a second earlier we would have had an awful collision, and I was a little angry," said O'Shaughnessy, who is also the strategy expert for Wimbledon, the Australian Open and the men's ATP World Tour. "I was wondering who this guy was. And I looked back and it was Rafael Nadal." The 31-year-old Spaniard's pre-match routine includes a long series of rituals that include taking a freezing cold shower to invigorate himself before putting on his headphones while his trainer bandages his feet. After putting grips on all 6 rackets himself, Nadal will then wet his hair before putting on his bandana before using the cramped space of the locker room to do a series of short, violent bursts of exercise. "It is very intimidating," O'Shaughnessy said. "If you are an opponent of his, and seeing this pre-match ritual of maximum intensity, a lot of times the matches can be won or lost right there." As a coach, O'Shaughnessy would advise a player to go somewhere else where he's not. Go to another locker room. Don't let that have an impact on you. Don't watch it. Friendships, perhaps the most gladiatorial of all individual sports besides boxing, tennis is unique in the way all players have to share the same facilities as the biggest rivals, even on finals day. Given what's at stake, you'd expect the locker room to be a place of heightened tension and anxiety where it's hard to make friends. Maria Sharapova return leaves women's tour divided. Red Sharapova beaten by most vocal critic. "It's tough for me to imagine being friendly and having a friendship with someone and then the next day going out on the court and trying to beat them," Sharapova explained in an interview with US broadcaster Larry King in 2013. "I don't think that's fair." Sharapova's reluctance to make friends may explain some of the criticism she has received from her fellow players when she returned from a 15-month doping ban last month. Although former world No. 3 Pam Shriver said she was one of the more social, talkative players, with lots of friends on tour, the American pointed out some of the great champions of the past also needed a bit of distance. "I can tell you that Steffi Graf and her locker room demeanor is not unlike what I think Maria Sharapova's is like." Shriver, an ESPN broadcaster who won 20 major doubles titles with Martina Navratilova between 1978 and 1997, told CNN Sport, "Which is to keep a very strong, isolated boundary and you adjust in your own preparation. You are in your own world and you don't really need anybody to prepare other than your team." Even Chris Evert for a while really felt like she needed to isolate in order to get the best out of herself, Shriver added. "It's not just the women who struggle with the boundaries of friendships in the locker room." Top-ranked Andy Murray and second-ranked Novak Djokovic were firm friends when they played each other in the juniors but put the friendship on hold when they started to contend for titles on the men's tour. Pecking order. Although the French Open locker rooms are luxurious with comfortable couches and wooden lockers, nothing beats Wimbledon, where attendants draw players an ice bath to aid recovery or a warm bath to relax in one of its marble tubs and even serve tea and biscuits. The bigger the star, the more privileges they get when it comes to locker room perks. According to Palmer, the locker room attendants are the same people each year, and once a player has a locker they then try and give those players that same locker each year, said Palmer. To mark the retirement of 22-time major winner Graf, French Open organizers engraved her playing record on the door of her locker, number 19, and gave it to the German as a gift. And to illustrate just how irreplaceable Graf is, the tournament locker room now has an 18B, but no number 19, Roland Garros said on its website. Although the French Open has 2 locker rooms, one at the main court Philippe Chatrier and one at the court Suzanne Lenglen, its second show court, nowhere is the pecking order between the sports superstars and its journeymen more clear than at Wimbledon. The All England club has a separate locker room inside centre court for the top 16 seeds and what is called the North and South men's dressing rooms for the other players. That main locker room was a lot smaller and lot more intimate, but you really got the sense it was a special club to be part of, said Palmer. In 2001, the North and South locker room was being used by eventual champion Goran Ivanisevic, who had slumped so much in the rankings he needed a wild card to enter the main draw. As he advanced through the tournament, Ivanisevic was offered an upgrade to the top 16 locker room. He refused. He didn't want to change the routine, Palmer said. Whenever he played, there was an amazing buzz up in our locker room. Everyone would be watching his matches and we almost thought he was one of us. Practical jokes. Although most players are creatures of habit and the locker room is a den of superstitions, there is also time for humor. One of the biggest practical jokers on the men's tour was the now retired Frenchman Michael Laudrup, who once hid in the locker of Ivan Lubasik in Miami in the hope that some of the Croats' good form would rub off on him. Visit cnn.com/tennis for more news and videos. These lockers in Miami aren't that big, but he climbed in there and the guy opened his locker, and he was there, cramped, Palmer said. It was just comical. Even with all the rivalries, you're one big family, because you see each other week in, week out, Palmer said.